So in this video, I'm going to demonstrate two black and white conversion methods that I dub the quick and the useless. And that's just because they're really sort of archaic conversion methods, but I want to make sure you have exposure to them because every artist is creative and they're able to figure out creative ways to use old tools to make new things.
Yes!
Are you ready? It's Photoshop time, and you know the drill. Smack it, whack it, and crack-a-lack it.
Yes! That's awesome! What?
So the first one is basically blending with black, but it really could be blending with white. It could be blending with anything. It's very simple. Essentially just go down to the bottom fourth icon in the layers panel and then go up to solid color. It's going to create a color fill adjustment layer, and this is black. It auto chose black. I'm going to click OK, and essentially change your blend mode to color. And now it's in black and white, but you have no editability. You can't adjust the color luminance. There's nothing you can do here except add your normal levels and curves adjustment layers to push or pull the direction of the contrast. And then here's the other thing. If you double click on that color and you choose pure white, notice there's no difference. If I double click and choose somewhere in the gray area, no difference. Essentially, if you pick anything that's from pure white to pure gray, but neutral of color, you're going to have exactly the same thing. So again, it does convert it to black and white, but for me, there's just so many more useful ways to convert to black and white that's still a single click that I enjoy much more. Like if I come up to the black and white adjustment layer, and then of course I have the ability to adjust the color luminance. I'll delete that. I have the gradient map adjustment layer, which is really quick and tends to tone map really nicely. But I can double click on this and then add my own points to set my own exact color range and contrast range, giving me fully editability over the highlights, shadows. It's just still super quick. And if I just need a one-click fix, well, it's there. So again, that color blend mode one is, I think, fairly useless. Okay, here's the second one. And again, this used to be the end-all be-all black and white conversion method. It's called lab color, but this was 20 years ago. And Photoshop is known for most of the time not removing any features, even though there are better and newer features there, because a lot of Photoshop users don't stay 100% up to date, so they learn something and then 5 years later they're still doing it that same way, even though there's probably two other ways that are 100 times quicker, or at least twice as quick, or more efficient, or less destructive. But anyway, I digress. So Photoshop tends to leave everything in there. So let me show you how to do lab color conversion. Essentially, I'm starting with a background image, which is fine. I'm gonna go up to Image, Mode, and lab color. Once I go to lab color, essentially it's going to convert my color mode from RGB to lab, which really records just the brightness and color values separately. And you can see this in the channels panel. Remember the lightness channel right here, that basically covers all your white to black data points. And then these A and B channels, they carry all of your color information from green and magenta and blue to yellow. Now you don't need those, so I can select the A channel, click the trash can to delete it, and notice what happens. Notice the lab and the lightness channels. See how it automatically, the lightness channel converted to alpha 1, and that's totally normal. So I'm going to delete this one. Now if you're a person that kind of keeps an eye on image file size, notice we just dropped down to 34 megabytes. Basically threw away 2/3 of our information here, right? So we're going to go back to layers, and now we have a black and white conversion, and it looks nice, but I would argue that it was such a well exposed, well photographed shot with appropriate color and tone contrast that any conversion method is going to look really good. And I'll go back and show you that in just a moment. Looking at this, maybe I want to adjust the midtone values, but look, all of my adjustments are grayed out, and these are the adjustment layers, remember? If I come over to the destructive adjustments, which basically gives me access to most of the same ones, the bulk of these are grayed out. I have 8 options here. These are basically the 8 options that were only in Photoshop 2 decades ago. So that's why these are the ones that work with this particular feature. Now here's the other thing. If I want to output this, I can't because, well, it's in multi-channel mode. There's no printer, there's no CMYK printer or inkjet printer that will print from lab mode. You have to get it back to RGB mode or CMYK if you're going to an actual printing press. But I can't even choose RGB mode or CMYK. First, I've got to click grayscale mode. Then I've got to go back to image mode. Then I can choose RGB or CMYK. So notice my file size, it just tripled. Now I'm at 103 megabytes. And I have now 3 different color channels, but as I click on them, notice they're no different. They're 100% equalized. So again, in the old days, this was the best possible way to convert an image to black and white, because we didn't have basically almost all the other ones that we have today. Let me revert this. Actually, what I'll do is I'll duplicate it first. So here's the duplicate right here. I'm going to come back to this image, and I'm just going to go to File and Revert. So to go back to the original saved version, you know, since I haven't saved it since I converted it. Then I'm going to click black and white adjustment layer and the gradient map adjustment layer. Go to View. I'm going to go to Window, Arrange, 2 up vertical. I'm going to go to Range, Match All. So here they are side by side. On the right is the lab, which again is really nice, but I'd argue it's really nice pretty much because it was a great photograph to begin with. On the left is, on top is the gradient map, hide that, and then here's the black and white adjustment layer. And you're like, well, I really like the one on the right. Yeah, that one on the right's nice, but we can see what's kind of going on. Essentially those red channels and the yellow are a little brighter, right? And we're pretty much back to that. So again, if you find a use for the lab color that's specific and beneficial to you, please share it with me, because I'm eager to find out how this kind of old technique can be used in a way that's quicker or more efficient or gives you somehow more control than some of these other features that we have.
Yes!
Hey, what are you still doing here? It's over. Actually, all kidding aside, I hope this video helped, and if it did, consider subscribing. I like subscribers.
That's awesome! What? You just took one in the jugular, man! Whoa! Yes! Oh my god, I did! This is...
Hey, you stayed to the end. You know what that means? You're awesome. I'm talking about you. Now get out of here.